Here are 2 little books my mum gave to me in 1956 when I was 3.5 years old, for a road trip we took with my grandfather and grandmother back to Chicago, where my mum was born. My grandfather used up all his vacation time every year to go back and help his mum, making repairs around the house, doing yard work, etc. My great-grandfather had built the house with his own hands, and out of all the brothers and sisters, only my grandfather used his entire vacation to fix up the place until she died in the mid-1960s. That has always inspired me. This is the only trip we all made together. I have just one memory of the journey out by car, more like a photograph of me in the back seat playing with a toy telephone truck that had a remote control on a wire attached to a hand flashlight-sized metal cylinder with a forward button and a reverse button. This was one of the first plastic toys available. Most everything was either die-cast or stamped sheet metal in those days, and remote-controlled toys in 1956 were virtually unheard of. So, I don't know who loved me that much to get such a toy, but I do recall playing with it all the way there, though I only have one memory where I actually see it sitting on the back seat next to me. I only have blurs of memories of the actual time in Chicago, but I know my mum and I flew back to Burbank, with my grandmother, I think, on one of the big passenger propeller planes before the days of commercial jets. My grandfather drove back when he had finished helping his mum. I also don't recall the plane flight itself, though I almost do. There's something fuzzy around the edges of my mind, more like half a feeling of waking up briefly, hearing the sound of my mum telling me it's okay and to go back to sleep. But it is so faint. Perhaps it's just my imagination filling in gaps. What I do recall with certainty is that my Aunt Toots met us at the airport. She was my grandmother's sister, my mum's aunt, but I always knew her as Aunt. In those days, you just walked down the stairs from the propeller plane and people met you at the bottom out on the tarmac. We took a short trip to my aunt's rather than to our house, and she made breakfast for us. I know this from a flash of memory at her house, me in my mum's arms, with the smell of bacon in the air and the sizzling in the background. Perhaps we took a red-eye. Don't know, but in my memory it seems like it was dark at some point in all this. Anyway, for me, having these books with my mum's inscription is an amazing thing. I had completely forgotten about them until they turned up in one of the boxes I'm sorting this very morning. My heart smiles. Now here's a special treat. Some home movies I recently discovered of my grandfather and grandmother, his mum and me, that my mum and grandfather took while we were in Chicago. My grandfather was an avid photographer and had just bought the 3-lens Kodak 8mm movie camera, especially for this trip. Here's his mom, my great-grandmother. My grandfather climbed up to paint the trim. And my grandmother helped out as well. Here is the only film I know of, with both me and my great-grandmother, and of course my grandfather as well. But my part of the trip was over. So my grandmother and mum, with me in tow, returned to California as my grandfather carried me up the stairs to the plane. He stayed behind to continue to help his mum and to visit, and the other 3 of us ended our journey with my very first plane flight. My Biography is written by Melanie Ann Phillips. Follow her for free on Patreon using the link in the video description.